All right, it's exactly 8 or 9 a.m. A very good morning to you. We are wrapping up the month of May. Now we have 2 months only to the August polls, all right? Now this is just something that everyone now is talking about, not just in the country, but globally. Questioning, the running mates, presidential candidates, IEBC clearing some, and of course putting some on hold, depending on merit, integrity, and documentation. But of course, there's another angle we're looking at today. Kenyan politics. Is it really grounded on leadership and goodwill? You are a citizen watching in diaspora. I'd love to hear from you. If you're a citizen in the grassroots, mashinani, or even in the cities, this is a conversation that will need your full participation. So join my panelists already in studio with your comments, concerns, and questions. Challenge the conversation as well. We're live on Facebook this very minute. So use the hashtag #TheMorningDrift. And if you can, of course, call out any particular politician on their actions. This is the platform. Let us assess this together. If you want to also, share with us a politician or leader, for that matter, that you feel is actually, a reference point, doing amazing things. They're not just politicians, but they're leaders. We'd love to know who we can emulate. But we would love to really ask this question today. Is the Kenyan politics, all right, or political power play grounded and founded on leadership and goodwill? Allow me to, of course, appreciate and welcome my panelists on set. Mr. Joshua, it's good to have you. Usually I allow my panelists to, of course, welcome the viewer as well. So say good morning, say your name and all the hats you wear, and then we can come to Mr. Leopard. I'm just calling you that for today, but of course you'll give a proper introduction shortly. Karibu sana.
Welcome viewers, and thanks for having me. My name is Joshua Mwai. I am a lawyer, an advocate of the High Court, and I am also a governance consultant, primarily working in the civil society NGO sector. I've done things to do with civic education, voter rights, that sort of thing. Okay. And I think this is a very pertinent discussion, especially at this time of election and electioneering. I think it's a very important discussion for us to have, and I hope we will inform the audience and also learn from them.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And now my other panelist, who has been very vocal on issues of, governance, political analysis, especially online, sir. You have also said you're a politician at some point in time. Please introduce yourself again and let us know what we expect from this conversation.
Thank you. Call me Mr. Leopard and we're good. So you don't have to apologize.
All
for
right,
that.
thank you, sir.
Yeah. So I wear many hats. For purposes of this morning, I'll say that I'm a leader. I'm a born-again Christian. I don't shy, saying that. I'm a musician too. I'm a political leader. I'm a psychologist and a businessman.
All right.
I think that will do. When you are a leader, the estate that you lead, the people that you work with as their leader in many dimensions, you will require to have knowledge and experience on more than one of your specializations. So I think that answers as to why I've ended up touching on more than one thing along my career path.
Amazing. And it's talking about knowledge and, experience and skills, and this is an entire package. But I want to hear from you. You're the advocate of the High Court of Kenya, and, I'm bringing all these other skills that we all have in this panel to create a clear picture to the viewer. Looking at Kenyan politics, all right, let's just start from there. Generally, since we gained independence, we start from back into now where we're getting it, because there was Harambee Nyayo, wanafuata Nyayo, all right? But looking at the governance of this country, an overview, if we begin, before we go into the, the little gritties and the in-depth, are we at a good place? Has it always been grounded, or rather founded, on leadership, as he has put it, and goodwill?
Well, Kenyan politics is some people call it an extreme sport because of the things that you go through, basically, just to even get to that. Being a politician, yes, it is a form of leadership, because you are put in a position where you are in charge of something and in charge of people. But whether it is founded on goodwill, there is where the question is, especially in Kenyan politics. Some people have said betrayal is the currency of Kenyan politics. I don't know whether that is true, but it's a very cynical way of looking at it, because, as you said, from independence, if you look at from the time when Jomo Kenyatta came in, and then he fell out with the first Vice President Jaramogi on matters of principle. Yeah, some people would call that betrayal, other people would not. And then if you look at the chain of assassinations that happened in the 60s, starting with Pio Gama Pinto, and then Tom Mboya, and then later J.M. Kariuki, and so on. Some people would call that a sort of betrayal, because people were taken out for disagreeing with the government or having certain beliefs that were seen to be contrary to the powers that be, and all the way down to the Moi era, and even when we had the NAC government coming in 2003, the so-called MOU that people agreed upon, and then some people turned, they weren't given what we agreed on in the MOU, and onward into NASA, and the fallout among the partners, and because of the sharing of the political parties fund and things like those. So the element of goodwill, to me, is where the problem is. Because it seems like the practice on the ground is, let me get power, and once I'm there, let me use it to the best of my ability, whether it is to the exclusion even of people I signed agreements with. And that's why you can see even things like the Political Parties Amendment Act being done this year to legalize the MOUs that parties are supposed to write, and what is supposed to be there. And there's a register of the political parties. You're supposed to deposit it with her, and if there are any problems, you're supposed to take it to the political parties dispute. Some
structure.
Yeah, so there is some structure. We have tried to legislate the goodwill there, and this is just among politicians. We haven't even started between politicians and the people. Yeah, that is a different thing, because like now we have chapter 6 of the Constitution about leadership and integrity. Why did we need to write it in a constitution if it was there in the first place? You see, so in our politics, we have come from a history of, yes, there is leadership, but because of the type of leadership, sometimes there isn't that goodwill, both between politicians and each other, and between politicians and the people.
All right, quite a legislative angle there. Thank you for bringing us up to speed, even on the new things that are happening, the amendment bills, etc. And I want to hear from you, Mr. Leopard, according to you, where you sit. That's his overview. What is your overview? And really, what would you say if you agree with him as well or disagree?
I agree with him. I will just take a different perspective altogether. My perspective is such that the culture of a people, their way of life, the set of values that they ascribe to as a people are to a big extent the reason why every other thing would move in the conveyor belt properly or otherwise improperly. When he asks that why do we have to put together chapter 6 to legislate matters of morals, to legislate matters of values and such kind of things, it simply goes a long way to speak to the value system of the people, the culture of the people. When we say that betrayal is the currency of politics, and and deceit being part of that, it is because we are embracing that as a lifestyle. We are embracing that as a culture. So the question is, where do we stand? Where does our community stand? Where does our population stand? I would answer it very metaphorically, that it lies in our ignorance or thereof lack of. And I'll simplify that. Most at times, if you have moved around a little more and you've interacted with a little more people in different cultures, you will realize that there are certain values that we suffer from, yet other people have those values in abundance. It is their lifestyle. There are certain values that we are good at, yet other people might be struggling with. So when I talk about ignorance or the lack of it thereof, it simply means, do we understand where we sit? Do we understand where we are standing to such an extent that we can further, we can push, we can advance and magnify those things that are working for us, but also deliberately and intentionally work on those things that are dragging us behind. If you go to Dubai today and walk into an Arab shop and buy stuff, they could as well give you stuff like 10 times the value of the money that you have, and they can ship it to you. And they believe and trust that you will be faithful enough to pay for that. Okay. There's a friend of mine who went to do such a shopping, and when he was asking questions that were bringing up mistrust, our typical Kenyan mistrust, those guys told them that I'm a Muslim. And that was supposed to shut up the conversation. He was trying to say that he subscribes to his religion, it's part of his value system. Okay. That trust is so much part of the core that it should not be one of the things we are debating around. Yet, that is the biggest deficiency in our current political dispensation. You may agree with that. Okay. Some of the problems we are having, calling each other watermelons and what have you, they're all founded on trust. Okay. So, as a Kenyan people, we just need to be aware, a little bit of more self-awareness. We just need to ask ourselves that, have we really lost the case? I don't think we have lost the case. When we talk about goodwill, it is a societal issue. And he said we are talking about politicians. We haven't even begun talking about politicians and the people. Yes. But what happens at the leadership, at the apex of it, at the top of the pyramid, are a product of who we are at the base. We dance to the tune of the people. Yet there should be an element of that, just a balance. A balance. The balance. Yeah. Now I want us to come now closer to this politics 2022, because that's nearer home. People can relate with it. This is what we're looking at. These are the leaders we are yet to elect, all right? This is the assessment that we are doing. IEBC has now thwarted 2 presidential hopefuls, that is the current news, on basis of 1 or 2 things, all right? So the Chebukati-led commission was very strict on that, and we want to figure out why. But they're still given some time then to make things right. We've had other running mates, of course, brought in with charge sheets, etc., corruption-based issues. And we are asking ourselves if this is leadership, if this is goodwill, but also on the prayer breakfast, because you usually have a prayer breakfast. You followed May 26th. We saw some really different actions unfold on that day. I want to hear your comments on the same, including the major quote-unquote handshake that we saw, highlighted by Charity Ngilu, talking about the incoming and the outgoing deputy presidents. But of course, let's just see a video of how the prayer breakfast turned out, and what your thoughts are would come in shortly with my panelists as well. Here you go.
Early Thursday morning, President Uhuru Kenyatta led leaders and diplomats in what is now the last breakfast prayer under his administration. The head of state noting the importance of the prayer in fostering national cohesion.
And I say this, well aware that the tempo of our politics is beating at an increasing rate day by day. But I just wish to emphasize that even as we engage in the upcoming contest this year or later this year, we know that the task of building a nation is a task that is passed from a generation to a generation. Generation and generations of leaders are therefore called upon to pass that baton unbroken, and I intend to do just that.
Uncertainty over the future of the nation in the run-up and the aftermath of the general elections dominated the theme of today's prayer session. Speaker after speaker calling for a peaceful electoral process to ensure the country does not travel another journey of post-election skirmishes.
We need to remain true to his word, and that has just been ably demonstrated to us by our religious leaders from all the faiths.
We join in one accord to pray against the spirit of fear of violence that is related to elections. Let no Kenyan be subjected to violence. Let no Kenyan be displaced or lose their property or loved ones due to electoral violence.
As it has now become the norm with public gatherings, politics did not escape today's prayer session. Deputy President William Ruto breaking the protocol to invite his rival Martha Karua to address the gathering, much to the excitement of those in attendance.
I'm here also representing my principal, the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga. And we remember that our Constitution acknowledges the supremacy of God. We remember our national values and principles, and how we pray that moving forward, and especially after these prayers, that our actions match our words. How we pray, especially for us leaders, even as we compete with ideas, not insults.
I believe that whoever will be elected in this election, it will be the will of God, and we will respect the will of God as expressed by the will of the people of Kenya.
Raila's absence, though, raising eyebrows and numerous questions over the state of his relationship with President Uhuru Kenyatta. Just what is going on between the two statesmen? Henry Tende, Look Up TV.
All right, now that's how this 19th edition of the prayer breakfast happened. And we saw there are a lot of things coming out. We saw Honorable Martha Karua being given a grand introduction by Deputy President William Ruto, much of it unpredicted. But of course, you're seeing Deputy President showing up after all the wrangles that happened within the cabinet at the time. And, you know, some of them saying this is not about us competing or insulting each other. It's all about ideas and making Kenya great. And I want to hear your thoughts on the power breakfast as we begin.
Of course, we know that the prayer breakfast has been happening. I think this is the 19th edition. Yes. It's been since 2003. So it was, of course, originally an American tradition which we incorporated in our politics. So it is intended definitely to bring people of all the different political sides to one prayer breakfast where they pray and reflect over the future of the country and then the spirituality of the country. So the idea is good. Mm-hmm. The idea has always been good. But sometimes if you look at, even the Bible says faith without action is dead. So sometimes the words that they are saying sometimes don't match their actions immediately after. So, even just looking at the prayer breakfast itself, look at the body language of the people, look at the seating arrangements. On one table was Uhuru Kenyatta, Attorney General on one side, Chief Justice on one side. On the other side, Deputy President Ruto and the Speaker of the National Assembly, Justin Muturi, on one side, and the Speaker of the Senate on the other side. Mm-hmm. In past prayer breakfasts, the President and the Deputy President were on the same table. Now they are not. It's a subtle change, but we know there's been friction between them, and we've been hearing their public statements and so on. So even when the Deputy President was saying, if anybody I have wronged anybody, I asked for forgiveness, and I also pray that the President's hopes and dreams may
which
come
will
true.
Of course play shortly again.
Yes, mm-hmm. and you could see the President's facial expression was like, just finish. Yeah.
Or was it?
Yes, to me. I know we will play the clip, but it looks like that. And also you could see the body language was like ambivalent. Like you are on one side, I am on one side. Yeah. So we are not really together. And even though, we did see the breaking of protocol of the Deputy President inviting the running mate of the other side, Azimio, to the podium. Mm-hmm. And she did speak rather well. But even she herself said that we must follow it up with action. Now, the problem is, barely the same day in the afternoon, both sides were on the campaign trail, and they started attacking each other again. So they are both preaching peace. Yes, we need peace, we need to tone down the political rhetoric and everything. But as soon as they are out there in the field with the people, they go the opposite way, and they start spouting the same, oh, so-and-so is a thief, oh, so-and-so is old, oh, so-and-so is unfit for leadership. You know, the normal campaign continues even after the sort of like calming down presence of this prayer breakfast. So to me,
all right,
there wasn't any effect.
So I'm really curious, even as you're giving those sentiments, I'm coming back to Mr. Leopard, where is the failure at now? Is it lack of goodwill? Is it lack of the values you were saying, or leadership skills? When we're seeing all this, not putting into action, where's the failure at? When in reference to the prayer breakfast?
In reference to that, I would say it's a failure of goodwill a bit, because they don't trust each other. At the end of the day, if you both say the same thing at this prayer breakfast, then you should both, when you go out, you should both like follow what you said, because you trust the other person will also tone down their rhetoric, which is what was being preached, and you know, let us be peaceful, let us not attack each other, let us not galvanize our tribes against each other. You know, all the archbishops and all the other religious leaders said the same thing. But the politicians do not trust each other to follow those rules. So as soon as it's over, they disobey. Let me hear from Mr. Leopard in that same light. Really, is it, I don't know your perspective.
My perspective is completely removed from his. And there is a reason why I did my preamble by elevating the whole concept of culture, the cultural disposition of a people. You may disagree with the fact that William Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta, you know, sat on different tables, and this was supposed to be a prayer breakfast, you know, elevating the concept of peace. But I want to ask a rhetoric question. Is it a good culture that a deputy president can say on a national platform that there are many people who have hurt me and I have forgiven them? Never mind the authenticity of those words. It's only the fella speaking and God who can judge the authenticity and the veracity of those very words. But is it a good culture in a community? The answer is either yes or no, and yours is as good as, your guess is as good as mine. Is it a good culture for a deputy president who has had a rough reign with his sitting president in previous years, 2, 3, 4, to look at the president in the eye and say that, Mr. President, I know, because the president had said it, I know that I may have fallen short of your expectations, and I apologize. The question is it a good culture? Is it a good precedence to set? My answer to that would be yes. That is how we build a culture. If you want to build a good culture, it doesn't come in leaps and bounds of perfection. It comes with the intention and the import of that intention, what it portends, what it is likely to inculcate in the minds of the people, what it is likely to translate into future similar actions. It's okay. By saying this, somebody might as well say, this guy seems to be really, you know, elevating William Ruto at that particular part. Those who've been listening to my political analytics, I have always said that, and I'm just simplifying that in the funeral of a former cabinet minister, Soita Shitanda, it is William Ruto who told us that if you want to succeed in politics, he used an analogy and said, Moi alifuata nyuma ya baba ya huyu mzee, that is nyuma ya Kenyatta Senior, and then he succeeded. And then he said, Raila alivuruga Kibaki akajipata mstuni, and then he said that is the way to go about. As far as I'm concerned, I am one of those fellows who have said that William Ruto was on the right trajectory until alivuruga his boss, and that's supposed to be a reality. We shouldn't really debate about that. He had reasons, but my point is, if he can come back on his final prayer breakfast, hypocritical or otherwise, it's not in my place to say that, and he can apologize to the head of state and wish the head of state good health and prosperity and peace in his retirement, and the president returns the jest and says that prayer of yours should come true. Of course, he was trying to say, you said you want God to fulfill all of my wishes. One of my wishes is to have Azimio win, so if that prayer can be honored. But the point is it a good culture to inculcate in our people? Absolutely, yes.
All right, let's take a look at this video for all those who might have missed, of course, the national apology from Deputy President William Ruto to his boss, who is the sitting and reigning president, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta. And now they say, hypocritical or not, perhaps it had to shape people's minds in a way or another. My panelists seem not to be on the same page on this one, but what is your thoughts? Is it goodwill? Is it hypocritical? Is it leadership? Take a look.
Despite the muted atmosphere at this year's National Prayer Breakfast, politics still played out during the early Thursday function attended by President Uhuru Kenyatta and Deputy President William Ruto at the Safari Park Hotel, Nairobi. Ruto, who has been alienated from his boss, the president, since 2018, took to the podium to ask for the president's forgiveness for what he termed as not fulfilling the president's expectations.
I also know that serving as deputy president, I may have fallen short of expectations of my boss, His Excellency the President, my good friend. I ask for your forgiveness.
The DP went on to wish the president all the best in his endeavors after he retires on August 9th. Seating arrangement was a stark contrast with the previous prayer meetings where both President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy would share a common table, sometimes even with their spouses. During the prayer meeting, President Uhuru Kenyatta shared the table with Chief Justice Martha Koome and Attorney General Paul Kihara, leaving a hollow to guess their differences.
My friend, President Uhuru Kenyatta, as you head to retirement, it's my prayer that God will give you every aspiration of your heart and make it possible for you to enjoy the legacy that you have built and to enjoy every piece of the time God will give you.
Ruto's sentiments seemed to allude to prevailing political grapevine that the president plans to remain in active politics after his term expires in August, claims that Azimio flag bearer Raila Odinga has hinted at in the past. In his short, cryptic, yet politically telling speech, the president avoided responding to Ruto's confession, but instead declared that the country will experience unprecedented peace after the upcoming general elections.
Mine is to wish that we will end up much more united and stronger after this election than ever before.
Further, the president, who has actively campaigned for the Azimio aspirant Raila Odinga, urged presidential aspirants to be ready to accept the outcome of the elections, whatever it will be.
And to wish each and every person who is vying the best of luck, knowing that there will only be one winner, as we have been told. And our prayer is that we shall accept and be able to move forward.
The fault in the stars of the country's topmost politicians appeared soon after the Uhuru duo won the second term in office in the heavily contested 2017 general elections.
Kama unataja ubaya wake, toka uache wale wengine waendelee. Lakini huwezi kuja na mdomo moja unasema hii, mdomo mwingine unasema matusi ya wale ambao mko ndani yao na mmesema mnafanya na wao.
Soon after the repeat elections, signs of cracks in the previous tight relationship between Uhuru and Ruto started to show in public, with two functions, namely Kieleweke and Tanga Tanga, appearing within the ruling Jubilee Party. The two sides have continued to drift apart ever since, culminating in the removal of Ruto from the Jubilee Party and the formation of the United Democratic Alliance, UDA. Although insiders point at the delegation of top positions and Uhuru's March 2018 handshake with Odinga as the origin of the fallout, both sides have given their own accounts of what planted the seeds of discord between them. Waris Kimathi, Look Up TV in Nairobi.
All right, that's how it played out that day. I want to hear your thoughts at Look Up TV, and we're live on Facebook. Really, gentlemen, you have seen it. And of course, we went back to 2021, how everything happened, through to now when the apology was officially televised. And I'm looking at really Ruto, Deputy President William Ruto, and of course His Excellency were once, summoned to the ICC. We were all together on that. We were looking at the clearance, and now we're looking at corruption. I want us to come closer to matters of corruption. There's been war on graft for a really long time. Some of the things that actually caused this disconnect was, can you show us where you got this? How are the resources happening? So there was a lot of corruption talks. We talk about governance, leadership, and politics. Corruption in Kenya has quite been a conversation. And I'm looking at transition of power right now. There was a lot of, not really outcry, but elicited reactions when each of these teams chose their running mates. Now I want to talk about our running mates in transition of power. We're looking at, of course, Ruto with Gachagua. We're looking at Azimio having Martha Karua, and of course we saw that handshake right there, which we will highlight somehow briefly. And I want to hear your thoughts, really, even in the legal fraternity. We're looking at IBC thwarting people and saying you're not eligible for these positions for running, but these are the people Kenyans even get to elect. You mentioned ignorance or lack of it, but why do we celebrate or maybe glorify corruption in that way? He will steal something, I'll say for example, and he will vie, and we will elect. Where is the miss here? Is it misdirection, like you say, lack of civic education? Are we misguided? Do we mistrust? But why does it seem to always be the line during elections?
Right. So, well, from where I stand, I mean, just looking at corruption as on its own, we know that one of the running mates, Gachagua, is currently under investigation by the DCI and EACC. He was called in because of past issues to do with procurement and tenders with the government, amounting to I think 2 billion. It was a huge amount. About 7. It was even more. So yes, it was a huge amount. But of course he was called in, and the charges haven't really been preferred. He was called several times, and even he himself on the campaign trail has said, I haven't been charged with anything. Okay. Yes, I was just called, I was arrested, I was thrown in for a day. They arrested me on a Friday or whatever, and I came out. And since then, they have been silent. So that is a campaign. Of course, he's on the campaign trail. So for him, he's selling his campaign. But the legal position is actually that unless you are convicted of corruption, or a crime relating to corruption, and you have exhausted all appeals, all the way even to the Supreme Court, and then maybe after you've exhausted, after you failed in your appeals, then that original charge, conviction on corruption will stand. That is what will be used by EACC to block you. Of course, they communicate with IBC, because IBC asks them, is this candidate cleared? So that is what they will use, because you have been convicted in a court of law and you've exhausted all your appeals and you have failed. But you can also do the appeal and it's overturned again. So, and that is what somebody like Sonko is doing, because he was impeached again on corruption issues. But remember, the Senate sits almost like a court, but it's not a court. You can actually go and appeal it in a court of appeals and Supreme Court. And so Sonko's appeal was defeated, but he never went all the way till the Supreme Court. All right. Yeah. So that is his argument. Now he was challenging even the basis of the impeachment. That is Sonko now. Right. But his is still yet to be decided. He hasn't been fully cleared to run for the governor, but he's still campaigning. Yes, he's still campaigning. Yes. So despite all that, at the end of the day, until and unless the IBC stops you from running, you can still run. Until and unless you have exhausted all the avenues for appeal. So even with the information out here and questionable, yet to be verified characters, we are still on with the election on the August 9th, and we're still seeing these names coming up. I'm not saying for sure that they are corrupt or not. However, there have been, NYS scandals, etc., but have still been in the picture. And I want to hear, because Kenyans are looking at what next transition of power are we voting in? And I want to hear, when a leader decides to still campaign, is it goodwill? Is it leadership? We're just trying to understand.
Okay, if you ask me, the whole subject of corruption
Yes.
has been adjudicated poorly in this country. It has been adjudicated poorly because the fuel that engineers the discussion around corruption is purely political. And then the legal aspects of it, which are supposed to be the real channels through which we can sort out corruption issues for real, they are compromised along the way, and they are not applied properly, at least not to the full cause. What do I mean, political versus legal? We're talking about Rigathi Gachagua, for example. So the players, that would be the DPP and the DCI, would throw out a Pandora's box and say, we are charging this guy because of A, B, C, D, and we're talking about a lot of money from here to Timbuktu, okay? But then we don't see the guy in court. We don't see that process seeing the light of day. So what are we supposed to conclude eventually? Was it a political witch hunt, or was it actual, true corruption? We will then say so-and-so is corrupt. And after saying that, we go ahead and even change the notes. we even go and change the notes because we know somebody has money in their safe, okay? And unfortunately, you know, as a religious man, I had some religious leaders in Rift Valley complaining and making a big fuss and saying, when is our turn to receive this money? When will it be our turn to receive this money? And the deadline for changing notes is just about. So my point is this, that our war on corruption has been lip service. If we talk about the last 10 years, the Uhuruto or the handshake government put together, I will authoritatively say that the war on corruption was purely lip service. There was never the goodwill, there was never the intent to actually solve corruption. And I'll justify that. I'll justify that by saying, yeah, you will say, for example, Anne Waiguru, call her all manner of names. And then after some time, you know, we had the discussion about Mosho Moja. You remember that? You go to Capitol Hill and then you get Mosho Moja. You know what that means?
I want to know if the viewer understands as well. Do you know what that means?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I mean, the claim was that when Baba was in the handshake environment, and he is the one who has been pinpointing where corruption is happening, suddenly the players of, or the so-called players of corruption in the previous moments were now getting approvals and endorsements and cleansing and suddenly being declared to be fit and being declared that they, you know, stories like Eurobond disappeared, stories like NYS disappeared. Now, these issues were no longer you know, being pursued. And then when we were doing the BBI, the run-up to the BBI, before it actually went to the courts, you will hear politicians saying that if you are on this particular side of the political divide, then the instruments, the EACC knocks on your door, DCI knocks on your door, DPP knocks on your door. And sometimes the cry about knocking on a door would be so loud and would even see these fellows in court. But the moment they are able to pledge allegiance to a certain direction, that noise goes away. That noise really goes away. That's why I'm saying corruption is a reality in Kenya. It is a truth. It is what is siphoning our capital. It is what is siphoning our ability to have an economic revolution. Let me just say an ambiguous statement out there. We say that our loans are our problems. I will say no. Our ratio of the debt to GDP ratio as a country, right now we stand at about 67. It is projected that by 2027 it will be about 70%. Japan's debt to GDP ratio is 256. That is to mean they have borrowed too much. You understand? But the question is, when you borrow this money, where does that money go? Does it go to do the infrastructure development? Does it go to transform the livelihoods of the people? Or does this money end up in corruption in people's pockets? So for me, the leadership on corruption, as far as the last 10 years are concerned, has been pure lip service.
I like when you've mentioned aspects of transparency, accountability. These are the things that we've, picked as written as some of the very firm values we look at in leadership in this country. I want to hear, because we're about to wrap up, you are very vocal on civic education. You talked about ignorance, and the power in democracy lies with the people as well. We're headed to August 9th. What is it that Kenyans don't know they ought to know? We always say, let's keep them accountable. You have the ones who have employed the CEO, who is the president. You have the power to, get them out of office. Now we're looking at transition of power. We're looking at, President Uhuru Kenyatta's preferred candidate, that is Raila Odinga, who has been in government before. We're looking at names that have appeared in politics, people we can look at their profiles. But really, when it comes to the power with the people, what would you say as far as accountability, leadership, governance, and goodwill is concerned?
Well, of course, citizens, before you vote, you need to know who you are voting for and what you are voting for. So part of it is just avoiding the ignorance that he said. That first of all, the electorate, a lot of the times, they know what ails them. They know we need roads, we need hospitals, we need schools. Yes. They know what they need. The problem is they are not really scrutinizing the person who has been there and whether that person has actually done what they had told him they wanted. Because usually these problems keep recurring. What was the problem in 2017 usually will be the same problem in 2022. We don't have roads. Oh, the economy is doing badly. Oh, our children, we need bursaries. Oh, we need, it's all the same thing. So sometimes there's a short-sightedness or lack of memory. Kenyans forget quickly. So sometimes the elected leader does maybe one flashy project. Yeah, maybe like, the Nairobi Express. Flashy. A flashy project.
You heard him say a flashy project.
A flashy project, okay. Yes. And usually it's very close to the election time. That project is unveiled. All right. And we are all like, wow, we are taken aback. Wow, this guy has actually done a good job. And then you forget the other 4 years. What did this person actually do to improve your life? Or even on the other hand, the person might not have done a lot during those 5 years, but during the campaign time, pours money. There is money. And of course, in a period of economic struggle, even you get 2,000, you get 1,000 just to go make noise at a rally. He gives you unga, cooking oil, salt. Hey, uni mtu wetu. And you forget. So you re-elect the same person, and then he does the same thing for the next 4 to 5 years, doesn't do the same thing. So a major problem is we forget quickly as Kenyans. Number two, we also do not follow current affairs very well. Right. Things like who has been brought to court, who has been charged, who has been convicted, why is this person still in office yet? This and this happened with procurement of such a thing. CDF, he was called to account for it by the Auditor General. The Auditor General said, and by the way, all these things, Auditor General reports, they are all in the public domain. You can find them. But how many Kenyans actually read them and find out what has happened in the nitty-gritty of leadership? So when this person comes for re-election, this is my clansman, this is my tribesman, so I will vote for him. But if you actually look at his history, it's a bit checkered. There are things he has done wrong, or she has done wrong. So there's also lack of scrutiny because there's lack of knowledge. Kenyans don't look at Auditor General reports. Some of them don't do, the younger ones, they don't even look at news, they don't read newspapers. Newspapers, and they don't really follow even parliamentary things. What is happening in parliament? What bills are we passing? The budget outlook statement for this year. What went into the making of the budget? Why are we being taxed so many taxes? Why is fuel cost so high? Why do we have 9 taxes for fuels? There should be 4. That sort of things. We don't go into the nitty-gritty of governance, and that's a big problem. All right, I'm going to come back to you, Mr. Leopard, on the same, because what we are talking about is currently going on. We're looking at transition of power, but the same names have popped up. It is true. I don't think, if Kenyans do check on these things in the public domain, please talk to me on at Lookup TV. Say maybe they're not clear. Maybe you're not being taught on how to, because we're looking at Mama Mboga at home, we're looking at Yule Mtu wa Boda Boda. How simple are these things? They're in the public domain, fine, but are they also packaged in a way that all Kenyans can read it and access it? All right, that's another question, because we're looking at, is the Kenyan politics therefore grounded or even founded on leadership and goodwill? I'm going to leave you with this, short clip of the now talked of new handshake, quote unquote, of Martha Karua, the nominated, of course, deputy president or running mate for Azimio's
presidential flag bearer, that is Raila Odinga, and Kenya Kwanza presidential candidate, that is now the Deputy President William Ruto. And after that, we'll take a short breather, but come back to still analyze and assess really where do we stand in terms of governance in this country. Take a short break, we'll be right back. But for now, the now talked of handshake.
Business, broadcast your sermon, share birthday wishes, make funeral announcements, produce adverts and documentaries, then book and advertise with us today by calling us on +254 700 893 542
700 893 542
or email us on sales@look-up.tv.
Yeah.
Are you looking to turn your passion to purpose? Vera Beauty and Fashion College now brings you online classes at the comfort of your home. We are a TVET-approved institution with over 20 years experience in training competency-based courses in fashion design and creative arts, cosmetology, hairdressing, beauty therapy, interior design in soft furnishings, event decoration and flower arrangement, hospitality and catering, and training of trainers. To enroll, call us today on 0704 577 577 or visit our website at www.verabeautycollege.com. Vera Beauty and Fashion College, a center of excellence.
Help me identify a beautiful woman. I never came across one till I got to Vera.
Yippee! Kamata floating at 349K. Oh yes, for only 349,000 Kenyan shillings, you become a plot owner at the Great Oasis Gardens, Nanyuki. The Great Oasis Gardens, Nanyuki is located along the Nanyuki-Rumuruti Road, only 11 minutes from the Cedar Mall and right opposite Mount Kenya Wildlife Estate. This is the best place to establish the getaway home that you have always dreamt about. For every 349,000 that you deposit or pay as installment towards any of Optivent's plot of land, you get 10K cash back instantly. Jaza basi tuende Nanyuki. Bigger is indeed better.
Chai ya dhao. Mimi ndo naongoja ati kachai, ka sausage, ka mayai hapa ka omelette. Sasa hii chai maziwa imewekewa mengi. Hata unajua vile chumi iko na. Hii chai ya dhao bwana.
Ile chai inaletewa ni kama maji ya kuosha vyombo.
Hiyo kadi utatoaje kama hujafanywa disability assessment?
Pia mimi naweza kufanyia assessment mama. Haya, si unaweza pata mtoto? Si mimi naweza kuoa. Ni assessment gani nyingine unataka?
Am I supposed to pay for disability parking?
Unataka kuniharibia gari zaidi.
Unajifanya uko na gari na kumbe uko tu na box. Na gari unashinda ukinipigia simu kwa kila siku kuja ona saa hii. Sijui
Hata baiskeli yenyewe hauna, hata wheelbarrow hauna.
Hizi nywele zako kwani umetengeneza lini?
Kwa nini zimefanya nini zikapoa?
Yaani zimekunjwa kuroliwa tu. Yaani zinakaa meholo. Unajua meholo?
Meholo ni nini?
Zile banana fibers. Lakini yenyewe alikuwa smart, but anataka washindane na Mweni. Akichujwa.
Welcome to Look Up Guest House, Retreat and Prayer Center. When you first come in, we will be happy to receive you at our reception, then proceed to our cozy and well-equipped accommodation facilities. We aim to provide our guests with a unique, comfortable, and worthwhile experience. Here at Lookup Guest House, we provide our guests with a continuous supply of room amenities. A cool environment for all your retreat activities.
Lookup Guest House Retreat and Prayer Center. For reservation, contact us on info@lookupguesthouse.org or call us on 0746 788 707. Like, follow, subscribe, click the notification button. Join the Lookup TV movement now. Now.
An interesting conversation here, helping us Kenyans understand if our Kenyan politics is grounded, founded. I've been very vocal and very, helpful in trying to understand legal perspectives, political analysis of where we have come from, where we are at, and also assessing things like corruption. If it is existent, how is it being handled? Most of the politicians, however, have been, summoned. He's saying some of them have been inconclusive, even in the judiciary arm of government. But really, as a Kenyan watching from back at home, how do you feel about the political status quo in this country? Remember, we only have 2 months to the August polls, and I want to understand who is your preferred candidate as a Kenyan. Mr. Joshua mentioned right here that there is a lot of ignorance because of lack of information. Do you do your research on who your preferred candidate is when you go to the ballot? Who are you voting in and why? All right, that is some of the questions we've been asking you today. I look forward to your response on Facebook. But now let's come back to, of course, some things we have highlighted. Handshakes, for example. These things are supposed to show, we are politicians, we have been having our differences, but really it's not as bad as it looks. Really, the question would be when they do these handshakes, for example, at the end of the day, do we see them translate to the goodwill of Kenyans?
Well, that is a profound question because, as you know, the handshake is a political gesture. It's a political gesture first and foremost, usually as a ceasefire act. Yeah, when our supporters are fighting, the country is in disarray, we don't agree on who won the election, so let us shake hands. Yes, but then what we are not privy to as Kenyans is the discussions behind the scenes that lead to that handshake and what is promised in that handshake. So like in 2008 when there was the handshake between Raila and Kibaki, that one was it came out of a disputed election, but there was also fighting, so it was a ceasefire handshake. But even still, in the lead up to that, there had to be negotiations and then concrete steps. Like after we shake hands, okay, we have this national reconciliation agreement. Then after that, we change the constitution. Then after that, there is going to be sharing of power or something like that. But then they started with the sharing of power first, the government of national unity, and then the constitution came way later in 2010. But you see, unless it is structured, the handshake really doesn't matter. It's what does the handshake result in? Yes, people might stop fighting temporarily when the handshake is done, but for there to be a lasting solution to the problem that was there before, there has to be some sort of agreement or some sort of structure and action points.
Okay.
Yes. So that's what we saw: structure and action.
Mr. Leopard, we just started from that note, and I want to hear from you first what your thoughts are. I know handshake is a good thing. The fighting would stop, but like you said, they did it reverse. Okay. Where does that place us?
Okay, we have been through many phases since the country was founded. starting with Jomo Kenyatta, who had his own style of leadership, which was both delegative. And I say so because when Kibaki was sworn in, he said that when Kenyatta gave you a job, he gave you a real job. So that looks like a delegative leadership. But he was also very directional, you know, like Mnapangwa. You get my point. We had Moi giving us 24 years of purely authoritarian and directive kind of leadership here. Mnapangwa, even the ministers, they wait for the red button, the one that is coming from State House. We have had the handshake, 2 handshakes.
Yes.
The Kibaki handshake of 2007. 2013 was a handshake of some sort. The country was headed asunder, and we had 2 of our leading politicians, you know, being charged in International Criminal Court, and the Uhuruto government was a handshake of some sort, followed by 2017 another handshake. So we've had 3 handshakes in a row. The question is it a good thing to take going forward? It's neither here nor there, but I will answer that by making a statement that there's time for everything. There is time for different dimensions of doing politics. So the question that we need to be talking about as a people is whether we are subscribing to one dimension or another, and I'll draw those parallels for you. Right now, Uhuru and Raila, when they came together to form that particular handshake, my understanding, and I've done a lot of commentary on this, like 2 years plus, the intention of the handshake was purely what we had in 2007, that the handshake happened, bring the country together, and then we now are supposed to do a constitutional change, not in parliament, but through a referendum, and Raila was meant to become prime minister at that particular time. So Uhuru, Raila, and Ruto were supposed to serve in one government. That would have seen Raila and Uhuru Kenyatta go home together and usher in a new Kenya that is united around the issues that were in BBI. But because mistrust and betrayal has been so much of our currency, William Ruto could not trust that process and he bolted down. That is the reality. Take that to the bank. Now, we are where we are. It is what it is. We have now chartered 2 different paths, and the representation of each path is such that Kenyans need to make a decision as to whether they want to repeat history and found a new political philosophy, which is being fronted. It was fronted by Raila and Uhuru, and now propagated by Uhuru, where we say, let's try and bring together a much wider Kenyan identity. Yes. A much wider Kenyan identity, you know, many communities, and you know, expand the executive, and that I don't really need to go to the nitty-gritties. We know that. Now, we were being told the other side positions were not issues. Now, you know, they are issues. They are saying what is good for the goose is good for the gander. So that is a dimension that, do the people of Kenya have enough knowledge and information that they are not ignorantly moving forward, but do they have enough and sufficient information to take that dimension that we can rewrite 50 years down the line? We can rewrite what the original dream of the founders of the nation were. And you know, the founders were, there were many players, but we're talking about Kenyatta and Jaramogi. You know, Jaramogi being told, form government and you can do whatever you want. Some people told him, form government, release Kenyatta yourself. He said, let them undo all the mess. Or do we say, there's time for everything and it's time to move? When I say time for everything and time to move, I'll take you at the global level and just give you 2 quick quotes, okay? There is a day when consolidating nations and populations was the fashion of the day. The way East Africa is expanding. Now we have DRC, you know, and we're expanding Ethiopia, and all that, all right? So there is a time when America was consolidating. It was not as big as it is today.
The United States.
The United States. Alaska was bought from Russia. Louisiana was bought from France. And in about 1846, there was the American and Mexican War. That is, the treaty that came out of it was the ceding of states such as Texas, New Mexico, Utah, and all that. Even this John McCain state, the state John McCain represented was Arizona. Yes. They were part of Mexico.
Right.
So there is a time when there was that consolidation. And then in the 21st century, we are having Brexit, where Britain is moving out of the European Union. So that is the other dimension, that as a country, should we say that we don't need to deal with our history, we don't need to rewrite our history, there's time for everything, and it is now time to have a different dimension and a different conversation, and that conversation is what is represented by William Ruto. So that's what the Kenyan population needs to settle, that they consciously, not out of being hoodwinked, but they consciously make a decision, do we rewrite or do we move forward?
All right, and I'm seeing IEBC taking center stage here. A lot of people saying we have put institutions in place to make this a reality, where we get to make decisions but supported by institutions. And IEBC so far, I want to take a look at that story. The IEBC has thwarted presidential hopefuls, and that is of course on grounds of failure to meet requirements. So this is the Justice Juma of Justice and Freedom Party and Peter Kingori, who is an independent candidate, who are the first to appear before the Chebukati-led commission for the verification process. Pardon me. Let's take a look at how this happened just on Sunday. And then we can conclude on what then we're looking at in regards to the structure you said and bodies that are put in place, trusted by Kenyans, to ensure the transition of power in goodwill and leadership is actually a reality.
Note one technical issue regarding the electronic soft copy of our supporters list. We did submit a hard copy of supporters list, which have been approved by IBC, and the technicality of how the CDs were swapped, I think that's what we are going to address. And lucky enough, we have them here within the compound. So there are things we'll address today, and I think on 2nd June, we will be able to, finalize on the process. I would have expected a communication from IEBC to inform me if the electronic version that they're having are not in tandem with the hard copy that we gave them. I think that is not on our side. You can forgive us on that, but we will provide them to them since they are there. I think it is these are matters of administrative issue.
Peter Kingori, the independent candidate, on the other hand, had 65 legitimate copies of his supporters out of the 45,000 that he submitted, 3,000 short of what the commission listed as requirement.
The self-declaration form is not accompanying the application. So we shall reject your nomination, your registration is rejected, but we are here until the 6th of June. Yes, in case you have to alert us, but we can.
The commission, however, has given the two time to comply, after which they will return to the commission with the relevant documents for clearance. The commission sought to establish whether the aspirants have complied with all its requirements, including a valid nomination certificate or clearance by the Registrar of Political Parties, a certified list of 48,000 supporters from at least 24 counties, at least a bachelor's degree, proof of nationality, proof of registration as a voter in Kenya, duly signed and dated code of conduct, compliance with Chapter 6 of the Constitution, and 200,000 nomination fee. The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission (IEBC) has released a timetable indicating when each of the 18 presidential aspirants will appear before the commission for clearance. On Monday, Professor George Wajakoya and Walter Mungare will appear before the commission. On Tuesday, Dorothy Kemunto Nyong'ari is expected to appear before the commission. On Wednesday, Gibson Garuya Ng'ang'a. Thursday, James Kamau. On Friday, Jeremiah Ng'ang'a and Janet Juliet Munyeki. On Saturday, William Samoei Ruto of UDA, Kalonzo Musyoka of Wiper Party, and David Mwaure Wahiga of Agano Party. On Sunday, Raila Odinga of Azimio la Umoja, Dr. Ekuru Aukot of Third Way Alliance, and George Munyota, an independent candidate. On Monday, June 6th, Jimmy Wanjigi of Safina Party, Mudhioria Elud Kiriara, an independent candidate, and Jeru Kadhangu of Ford Asili. Brian Amuai, Look Up TV. Nairobi.
business? Broadcast your sermon, share birthday wishes, make funeral announcements, produce adverts and documentaries? Then book and advertise with us today by calling us on +254 700 893 542
700-893-542
or email us on sales@luke-up.tv.
Hii ndio ulikuwa unaniambia chai ya dhao. Mimi ndo naongoja ati kachai, ka sausage, kama yai hapa ka omelette. Sasa hii chai maziwa imewekewa mimi. Hata wewe unajua vile uchumi iko na. Hii chai ya dhao bwana.
Ile chai inaletewa ni kama maji ya kuosha vyombo.
Hiyo kadi utatoaje kama hujafanywa disability assessment?
Pia mimi naweza kufanyia assessment mama. Haya, si unaweza pata mtoto? Si mimi naweza kuoa. Ni assessment gani ingine unataka?
Am I supposed to pay for disability parking?
Unataka kuniharibia gari zaidi.
Unajifanya uko na gari na kumbe uko tu na box. Na gari unashinda ukinipigia simu kwa kila siku kuja ona saa hii. Sijui
Hata baiskeli yenyewe hauna, hata wheelbarrow hauna.
Hizi nywele zako kwani umetengeneza lini?
Kwa nini zimefanya nini zikaiko?
Yaani zimekunjwa kuroliwa tu. Yaani zinakaa meholo. Unajua meholo?
Meholo ni nini?
Zile banana fibers. Lakini yenyewe alikuwa smart, but anataka washindane na mweni. Akichujwa.
Like, follow, subscribe, click the notification button. Join the Look Up TV movement now.
All right, now welcome back. Just looking at, of course, are we grounded on leadership and, of course, goodwill. First, allow me to apologize for that short technical hitch, but thank you very much for allowing us to grace your living room again and for choosing to stay with us on the big conversation. Now, as we close this discussion, which we're not saying we have concluded on fully, because I hope to have you back again, the IEBC, which is the independent, that word is very important, independent, Electoral and Boundaries Commission is now doing the verification for all these presidential candidates. By the time they're put on the ballot, the Mwananchi believes this is a cleared person. Let's hear your thoughts, 2 minutes each, on the vital role of IEBC in ensuring that our politics is not just grounded on politics, but leadership and goodwill. You will start with Mr. Leopard, and then I'll close with Mr. Joshua.
For me, I'll talk about IBC, but in a broader spectrum, just the independent commissions.
All right.
Being able to play their role around elections and on any other matters. The more efficient they are, the better. The more empowered they are, the better. The more effective they are, the better for our population. Now, our institutions are growing. We don't expect that IBC would get perfect in one election. They have gotten better with time. Of course, they have made their own mistakes, but they have also learned from it. For me, I think that scrutiny is good. That scrutiny is important. At the end of the day, they should also give us like candidates who are worth the salt. And I'm not trying to dismiss anyone. But the moment we have 55 candidates, okay, we've come down to 17? About 16, thereabout, which is okay. But generally, I think institutions should be allowed to function. They should be allowed to grow. And Kenyans should also be able to appreciate that that is happening, that a Supreme Court can actually, thwart BBI, thwart a presidential election. I mean, we are moving in the right direction. We should not just be that pessimistic. And I think IBC is doing great.
Okay.
And that's the direction to go. In South Africa, a political party recalled 2 presidents. They recalled Zuma, they recalled Thabo Mbeki, and there was no fight about it. So let our institutions grow.
Let them grow, and you're giving
Except the DCI and the DPP are the ones that are now taking us backwards, but that's discussion for another day.
For another day. All right. Thank you very much for also keeping us on that for the next conversation. Your sentiments, sir?
Yes. Well, what I would say is, first of all, it's a good thing that it's being shown on TV, the whole process, so that nobody can say my candidate was treated unfavorably, or maybe the criteria wasn't followed. So at least that in law we say justice must not only be done, but it must be seen to be done, for the public. So I like that IBC is being open about it. And also I like that they are setting standards as to who can actually run for these posts. The presidency is the most powerful position in this country. Not anybody can just wake up and run for it. And unfortunately, you see some people who haven't even run for any other position, from MCA all the way till governor, and then their first running is as the president. So such people, to me, I usually doubt them must, because you have never tasted any other political role, and then this is the first one you are going to. So even as an independent, and we are allowed under the constitution to go for it, but not everybody can go for it. So there must be standards to it, and they must be followed. So I like that. And even as we go into the election, definitely it will, all I hope is that now IBC, as he said, has learned its lesson, has learned that it needs to be transparent, it needs to be accountable, it needs to show like how the vote was taken from the very basic polling station all the way till the tallying center, and hopefully that we will not have any other cases of annulments in the future.
All right, and you have said we must appreciate the bodies doing their part. Some are very integral, like the judiciary, among others. And thank you very much for that awakening conversation we have had. Gentlemen, we look forward to another and lots more within the 2 months as we get towards the August polls, because we have realized that the power that lies with the people is hardly spoken of or heard of. We only look at the leadership that the people then have given to these particular individuals. Please avail yourselves when that time then comes.
Sure.
All right, this is the big conversation coming to the end, but the morning drip doesn't end here. We bring in the drip and flex, and trust me, for the first time, I actually learned how to do my eyebrows right. This was fun. Shortly after the break, we'll bring in the drip and flex just to know how to ensure that you look good, smell good, and at the end of the day, deliver just as good as you feel through the week. Shortly on #TheMorningDrip. Well, good morning. Now, after taking a look at the roads for those who want to step out, that's one of the things that we always do to ensure that you're in the know when it comes to the road traffic updates. And of course, a bit of road safety conversations just happened this morning, let alone the news segment, where we also made sure you know what's happening in the political scene. Starting out is that most of you guys have not registered as voters. Even as we continue with our segments this morning, we ask why it is that you have not considered being a voter for the 2022 polls. Let me know on our Facebook page. But for now, on the Drip and Flex, of course, it is all pimped on set today. I also have a beautiful, amazing, elegant, majestic woman seated right next to me. She looks it all. She's a makeup artist. That is Rima Karimi on Instagram. If she's done your makeup, I mean, she's a celebrity, by the way, in the industry. Yes. I give a shout out to the rest, like Denise Karuri and all the other makeup artists that are actually making it in Kenya. Something that was not embraced at the time, but now eventually is being recognized. And almost everyone now has a kit and presenting themselves as a makeup artist. But really, what is makeup artistry? We're coming deeper into that, and we want to also talk about the, ladies, the where we go, where you get the cheap makeup, the onlines where we get pretty much, affordable makeup, and then there is the expensive makeup. Someone would ask, but why the difference? Isn't makeup just makeup? I know we're discussing this morning because some of you are just trying to pimp their faces right now, trying to get yourself into that drip. So you want to follow this segment as early as now before you leave the house on what you need for that particular occasion. Is it an interview you're going to today? What colors don't you want to touch? So Karimi.
Yes.
Karibu.
Thank you.
That sounded good. Karimi. Karibu. How are you?
I'm good.
You look amazing.
You too.